I got back from Chicago a day early. The pitch meeting had been canceled last minute, and instead of staying an extra night just to burn time at a hotel, I booked the first flight home. I didn't tell Kate. I wanted it to be a surprise, not in a dramatic way, just something simple. A small gesture. I figured maybe we'd get dinner, watch something together like we used to. Lately, it had felt like we were drifting, and I wanted to push against that before the space between us turned into silence. When I walked through the door, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Her perfume. That warm, musky vanilla scent she always sprayed on her wrists and neck. It was still thick in the hallway, fresh, like she'd left minutes ago. The lights were off, but a candle was burning in the living room. Cinnamon, maybe, or something clove-heavy. One of those little ones she kept for cozy vibes. And on the coffee table, a mug of tea sat abandoned. Still had a tea bag in it. I touched the side of the mug out of habit. Cold. Her coat wasn't hanging up. Neither were her running shoes. I checked the kitchen and then the bedroom, even though I already knew what I was going to find. Nothing. She was gone. The only thing waiting for me was a short note scrawled on a sticky pad by the fridge. Staying at Jess's tonight. Girls' night. Don't wait up, smiley face XOK. I stood there for a second, reading it over, then reading it again like the words might rearrange into something different the second time through. It wasn't unusual for Kate to crash at Jess's. They'd been close since college, but something about it hit me wrong. The place felt like it had been staged. I can't explain it better than that. Everything was just a little too curated. The candle still burning, the tea she hadn't drunk, the exact way the note was placed. Not tossed down. Not forgotten. Positioned. Still, I let it go. Or tried to. I unpacked slowly, took a shower, and made a frozen dinner I didn't want. I thought about calling her, just to say I was back, but stopped myself. No reason to interrupt her night if she was really just hanging out with Jess. Instead, I half-watched a basketball game with the sound off and scrolled through Instagram. At some point, one of her coworkers, someone I barely knew, we'd met twice maybe, posted a story from some kind of rooftop party. The image was blurry, dark, the music loud and muffled, but I caught a flash of movement and froze. There, on the far right of the screen, half cropped out, was someone who looked a hell of a lot like Kate. I tapped back, held my finger down to pause the frame. It wasn't perfect, but I knew her silhouette like I knew my own reflection. That slight lean forward when she laughs. The way she tucks her hair behind her left ear when she's mid-conversation. And the outfit, that was the giveaway. She was wearing the same checkered cropped jacket she'd left the house in that morning. Dark navy trousers. And those weird drop-shaped earrings she'd picked up on Etsy last month. The one she said made her feel a little extra, but in a good way. She wasn't at Jess's. She was at a rooftop bar, smiling, leaning toward a guy I'd never seen before. Tall, dark hair, sharp suit, hand on the railing behind her like he was carving out space just for the two of them. Their heads were close. Too close for two people just talking. The next story, 10 seconds later, showed them from a different angle. The same guy held a glass of champagne. Kate was laughing, clearly mid-joke, her hand brushing his arm. My chest went cold. Could have been nothing. Could have been. But it didn't feel like nothing. I didn't confront her right away. I sat with it, watched the video again, paused it, zoomed in, played it again, over and over like I was trying to catch something I'd missed the first time. But the part that stuck, the part one couldn't unsee, was how natural she looked beside him. Comfortable. Not like someone surprised to bump into coworkers. Not like someone who hadn't planned on being there. I waited until the next morning. She came home early, around 7:30 a.m., and she looked tired, but not in a hungover way. Just like someone who hadn't had to lie yet today. She kicked off her shoes by the door and gave me a quick, surprised smile. "Oh, you're back early," she said, tossing her keys into the bowl. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, careful with my tone. "Flight got canceled. Came home last night." She walked into the kitchen like it was any other morning. "Should have called. I would have come back." "No worries," I said. "Did you have fun?" She glanced at me, reading me in that way she always could when she actually wanted to. Yeah, she said casually, pulling a glass from the cabinet. Low-key, just me and Jess. We did face masks and watched Love is Blind. Pretty wild night. I nodded, letting the silence sit for a moment. Funny, I said eventually. I saw a story from Alex. That guy from your work. Looked like some rooftop thing. I could have sworn I saw you in it. She didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. Oh yeah, that was random. Jess and I went out for ramen and ran into Evan and a few people from the office. They pulled us into that thing. Total coincidence. We didn't stay long. Evan. The name slid out too easily. No hesitation. It sounded rehearsed, like a script she'd gone over in her head. I just nodded again, like I was satisfied with that explanation. But I wasn't, because here's what she didn't know. I hadn't said which coworker had posted the video. I never mentioned Evan. Never said who was in the story. And yet, somehow, she knew exactly who I'd seen. After that night, I started keeping track. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stop myself. It was like something had cracked open in my head, and all the little things I'd brushed off or rationalized before came rushing back. Moments I'd dismissed as ordinary, now they buzzed with static, like background noise I should have paid attention to the first time. Kate had changed. That wasn't paranoia. It was observation. And now that I'd stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt, I couldn't unsee it. Her phone, for one. It used to live on the kitchen counter while she cooked, or forgotten in the bathroom while she showered. Now it was always with her, clutched in her hand, tucked into her waistband when she was doing laundry, even taken with her into the shower. I once asked if she was afraid of missing a call. She laughed. No, I just use it for music. Podcasts. She didn't used to. That was new. Everything was new. We used to eat breakfast together. It wasn't fancy, just coffee, toast, sometimes eggs, but it was ours. I'd tell her boring stories from work. Who said something dumb in a meeting, what supplier was jerking us around, which client wanted champagne on a beer budget. She used to smile through it. She used to ask. Now she just drifted. Breakfast became a granola bar on the way out the door. Or nothing. Or, I'm meeting someone from the office for a quick jog. That part stung more than I admitted to myself. Kate hated running. She'd made fun of people who called it their therapy. She once said the only reason she'd ever run was if someone was chasing her. And yet, here she was, suddenly embracing morning jogs like they were a lifestyle. No makeup, messy bun, big sunglasses, new leggings I'd never seen before, and a sleek new sports bag that didn't match any of the old ones she had. I remember standing at the window one morning, watching her jog down the block. She didn't look like someone who was miserable about the workout. She looked alive, like she was going towards something. It should have made me happy, watching her take care of herself. But it didn't, because she hadn't told me about the change. Hadn't invited me to come along. Hadn't said a word. That's what got me most. The absence. Not of touch or of time, though those were fading too, but of inclusion. She was still here, but she wasn't with me. I remember one night I asked her how her day had gone. Something I asked out of habit, and she said, "It was fine," before glancing back at her phone. Just that. One syllable. No follow-up. No. You'll never believe what Evan did today. Which was interesting because for a while, Evan had been all she talked about. At first, he was just a name in a work story, a photographer on some product campaign. She told me he was funny, said he reminded her of her brother, which made me laugh at the time. There was this whole bit about him showing up in mismatched socks to a client meeting and somehow getting away with it. That was month 1. By month 2, Evan had graduated to frequent guest appearances. She'd mention his playlists, how he knew weird facts about everything, how he once rescued a pigeon from the office terrace. It was always harmless, or so it seemed, and I was happy she had a friend at work. Someone to make the long hours a little less grueling. But over time, the mentions grew more selective. She stopped telling the full stories, stopped laughing when she said his name. It became this throwaway detail, tucked into sentences like lint, unimportant, but present. I might meet Evan at the agency later. Evan said this coffee place near the office is amazing. Evan thinks this color looks dated. That last one stuck with me. She was talking about the guest room we'd been planning to repaint. I'd picked out a soft blue-gray, but she brushed it off with, "Even Evan thinks that color feels tired." I remember pausing, confused. Why does Evan have an opinion on our guest room? She blinked. I showed him the swatch while we were grabbing lunch. I said nothing. What was I supposed to say? That it bothered me? That it felt like someone was slowly rewriting the margins of my life? After that, I started paying closer attention. I noticed she never said "we" anymore, not even by accident. She used to say things like, "Nick and I were thinking of going to Vermont," or "We're rewatching The Sopranos." Now it was just I, singular, separate. Her habits shifted, too. She started lighting candles more often, always the same clove and vanilla one. She said it calmed her, but it felt more like a staging prop, like she was trying to recreate a mood she didn't feel anymore. And when she went to the store, groceries supposedly, she'd leave with a list of things to get and come back 2 hours later with one bag. Not full. One bag. Like it was just something to carry so she didn't come home empty-handed. The lies weren't loud. That's what made them so convincing. They were quiet omissions, glances deflected, stories trimmed just enough to sound casual. I was never given a full enough picture to accuse her of anything. She never gave me the whole lie, just enough of it to make me doubt myself. And that's what I hated most. The doubt, the second-guessing, the spiral. I started noting things in my head like I was building a case. Times she left the house, places she said she'd be, phrases she used more than once. I remembered reading somewhere that people tend to repeat themselves when they're trying to convince themselves as much as the person they're lying to. She'd started saying things like, "We've both just been really busy lately," or, "I think we're just in a weird patch," not "I'm stressed" or "I miss you." Just vague blanket statements, as if the issue was floating in the air, not between us. One night, I tried to bring it up. I asked her, gently, if she felt like we were okay. She blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," I said. "It feels like we've been off." She paused. "We've just both been busy. You've had work. I've had work. That's all it is. That's all it is." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But the way she said it, like a pre-written excuse she'd practiced in her head, made my stomach twist. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while she slept beside me. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. I couldn't remember the last time she had rolled toward me in her sleep. She used to do that back when everything felt effortless. She'd mumble something half-conscious and press her cold feet against my calves. I used to pretend to complain, but I loved it. Now she slept like a visitor, a guest. The space between us no longer warm, just wide. And the worst part? I still wasn't sure if it was all in my head. That's what doubt does. It makes you complicit in your own gaslighting. You start thinking maybe you're the one who changed. Maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe you're just insecure and projecting and imagining things that aren't there. But the truth? The truth was already there. I just wasn't ready to name it yet. Because naming it would mean admitting that something had been taken, not all at once, but little by little. That the woman who used to leave me love notes in the fridge and steal my hoodie on cold mornings was now building a life I wasn't invited into. And no matter how quietly she did it, I could still hear it happening. By Friday, I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was prepared. There's a difference between wondering if something's wrong and knowing it is. I'd lived in that in-between for weeks, clinging to a hope that maybe I was overthinking everything. But hope turns heavy when it keeps running into the same wall. And now, all I wanted was truth, no matter how much it hurt. Kate told me she had a company event that night. She mentioned it casually over coffee, stirring honey into her mug without looking up. Corporate thing. End of quarter, drinks with the team. This mandatory, pretty much. Might run late. I nodded. Played it cool. I was so used to acting normal that it didn't even feel like lying anymore. Cool. Have fun, I said, smiling like none of this bothered me. She kissed me on the cheek. A quick, meaningless gesture, and disappeared upstairs to get ready. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the spot where she just stood. I waited until I heard the blow dryer start before grabbing my phone and wallet. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I just knew I had to see it for myself. The building wasn't hard to find. I'd looked it up earlier in the week, a loft-style event space downtown that Kate's company had used for past launches. Parking was tight, but I found a spot across the street with a decent angle. Enough distance to stay unseen, but close enough to see who came and went. IK** led the engine and kept the windows cracked. It was warm for October. For the first half hour, nothing happened. Just people in business casual drifting in, some carrying wine bottles, some with folders tucked under their arms. It looked like every awkward office party I'd ever been to. Loud laughter, strained small talk, a DJ spinning safe pop music that no one was really dancing to. And then I saw her. Kate stepped onto the balcony. The air left my lungs before I realized I'd even been holding it. She looked different, not in a drastic way but in the little things. More effort. Her hair was done in soft waves, the kind she usually saved for wedding invites or anniversary dinners. Her lipstick was bolder than usual, and she wore heels I'd never seen before. Not the kind you'd choose if you were expecting to be on your feet for long. Her dress clung to her, tasteful but confident. She wasn't alone. Evan stood beside her. He didn't touch her at first. Just stood there, close enough that the space between them said more than any gesture could. They talked like no one else existed. And then he reached for her waist. Not all the way, just a slow slide of his hand until it rested at her hip. Like it belonged there. She didn't flinch. She didn't look around to see who might be watching. She just smiled and leaned into him. It wasn't some frantic, guilty kiss. It wasn't rushed or hidden. It was slow, natural, like it was something they'd done a dozen times before. Like it wasn't new. Like it was part of who they already were. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I just watched. My heart didn't race. My fists didn't clench. I didn't feel rage or panic. Just a quiet, painful clarity that settled into my bones like winter air. It was all real. No more what-ifs. No more playing detective. No more giving her the benefit of the doubt she'd already spent. This was the moment I'd been walking toward, step by step. Every time I bit my tongue. Every time I said it's fine when it wasn't. And now it was here, undeniable, ordinary in its betrayal. A text buzzed on my phone. I didn't check it right away. I just stared out the windshield until the door to the balcony slid shut again and they disappeared back inside. When I finally picked up my phone, it was a message from someone I hadn't expected, Marissa, one of Kate's coworkers. We weren't close, but we'd been seated together at a company dinner once. She'd added me on Instagram afterward, but we'd never talked directly. Her message was short. I don't know if you've seen this. You should. Attached was a video file. I tapped it open. It was clearer than what I'd seen with my own eyes. Taken from inside the party, the angle was tighter, closer. Someone must have recorded it through the open glass doors. The footage was short, maybe 20 seconds, but it didn't need to be longer. It showed Evan and Kate on the balcony, right before they kissed. His hand trailing down her back, her smiling up at him, then tilting her face just enough. Lips meeting. No rush, no shame, just ease. They kissed like they belonged to each other. I didn't respond to Marissa's message. What was I supposed to say? Thank you for proving the worst thing I've ever imagined? Instead, I saved the video. Not out of spite, out of self-preservation. I needed to remember that I hadn't made this up. That it wasn't paranoia or insecurity or projection. It was real. It was happening. I drove home slowly, took the long way, let the city blur past the windows like static on a broken screen. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't even thinking about Kate. I was thinking about how quiet everything was inside me. I didn't expect the numbness. I always thought if something like this happened, I'd explode, yell, confront. But I didn't want to yell. I didn't want to see her cry or watch her twist the truth into something soft enough to swallow. I just wanted the silence to make sense. By the time I got back, it was after 10. The house was dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the kitchen, phone in hand, the video paused mid-frame. Her eyes still half open, her hand brushing against Evan's chest. The sound was off, but I could hear it anyway. I waited. An hour passed. Then another. At a little after midnight, I heard the key in the lock. The door creaked open. Her heels tapped against the hardwood. A second later, she stepped into the kitchen like nothing had happened. "Hey," she said, setting her purse down. "Didn't think you'd be up." Her tone was light, easy. She was wearing one of my old t-shirts, the soft gray one she used to steal when she wanted comfort. Her makeup was mostly wiped off, hair pulled into a low, lazy ponytail. She moved around the kitchen like it was any other night. Wineglass, kettle, tea bag. Her routine almost mechanical. I watched her without speaking. I watched the way she avoided looking at me too long. How she didn't mention the party. Didn't ask about my day. Didn't say she missed me. I could smell the perfume she wore to the party. Slightly faded, but still there. She was in the house, but not with me. That night we slept in the same bed. Our backs turned. Our breath out of sync. Her body a few inches away. Might as well have been miles. I didn't touch her. She didn't reach for me. And in that quiet, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't the beginning of the end. This was the part where the end stopped pretending. When she walked in that night, the night of the rooftop, the kiss, the confirmation, she didn't look shaken. That's what surprised me. You'd think she would. Even if she didn't know I'd seen her. Even if she believed her world was perfectly intact. You'd expect some trace of nervous energy. Some hint of the secret she'd wrapped around herself like a second skin. But no. She floated in like it was any other Friday. The same soft smile. The same quiet hum as she took off her shoes. She poured herself a glass of wine. Not red, not white, but that cheap rose she claimed not to like, and lit the same cinnamon candle on the coffee table. Her ritual. Her comfort. As she passed by me in the hallway, she gave a little smile and said, "You're up late." I nodded. Couldn't sleep. She didn't press. Just said, "Me neither." Like it was coincidence. Like we were on the same wavelength. We weren't. She disappeared into the bathroom, water running behind the door. I sat in the dark, the only light coming from the flickering candle, trying to remember how it felt to be in love with someone who didn't lie to me. She came out in one of my old shirts, the same one she wore the first night we moved in together. I remember how excited she was then, how she laughed and kicked off her sneakers in the hallway, declaring that the place smelled like fresh paint and possibilities. Now she moved like a ghost. Or maybe I did. We went to bed in silence. No brushing of hands. No soft murmur of good night. She curled toward the wall. I stayed on my side, eyes open, heart still, listening to her breathe. It felt like sharing a bed with someone who didn't know I existed. And the strangest part? She was relaxed. Genuinely. Like everything was fine. It was in the little things, the way she stole the comforter like always, the way she muttered something about turning off the hallway light, the way she drifted into sleep within minutes. She wasn't restless. She wasn't guilty. That scared me more than the kiss ever could, because it meant she didn't see it as wrong anymore. She'd crossed the threshold, the invisible line between mistake and decision, and once you're over that line, there's no coming back. You can apologize, you can cry, you can write long letters about confusion and self-growth, but the truth is simpler. You chose. She had chosen. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't whisper her name and ask why. I didn't say I saw you. I didn't ask who he was to her now. Couldn't. Not yet. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, counting every time she shifted slightly in her sleep. Each movement was a reminder of how close she was. And how far. The next morning, she was up before me. I woke to the smell of eggs, bacon, coffee, like some twisted callback to when we used to make breakfast on weekends and eat at the counter in bare feet. I came downstairs and found her humming to herself, flipping pancakes like we were still something worth feeding. "Morning," she said, smiling. "You looked tired last night. Rough week?" I nodded, watching her pour syrup like none of this was off. She set a plate in front of me and kissed the top of my head, and I swear to God, I nearly flinched. That small, familiar gesture had once meant everything. Now it felt borrowed from a script she didn't realize I'd stopped believing in. I looked at the plate, untouched. "You're not hungry?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not really." She just shrugged and turned on music. Something upbeat. I watched her dance in the kitchen, barefoot, hair still messy from sleep, like the woman I used to adore had come back for a morning cameo. But I knew better now. She wasn't dancing for me. She wasn't smiling at me. She was going through the motions of a life she had already stepped out of. That's what stunned me. How well she played the part. And not out of guilt, out of habit, out of self-preservation, as if her body remembered how to be in this relationship, even if her heart didn't. After breakfast, she slipped back upstairs to get ready for a yoga class. Another new habit. She used to roll her eyes at anything spiritual wrapped in spandex. Now she said things like, "I need to center myself, and my energy's been off." When I asked once what changed, she told me Evan had given her a book about alignment. She said it helped. Of course he did. Of course it did. While she was gone, I wandered the house like a stranger in my own life. Every photo on the wall felt staged. Every piece of furniture we picked out together now looked like a prop. There was a time I could name the origin of every item in that place. The couch from the outlet sale we stumbled into by accident. The bookshelf she built while drinking boxed wine and playing the K***lers on repeat. The rug we argued about for a week. "Too much red," she said. But we kept it anyway. Now I looked around and couldn't feel any of that. All I saw was her absence, stretched across the room like a shadow. The house wasn't empty. She was still here, but only in the literal sense. Her voice echoed in the hallways, but none of it reached me. I sat on the edge of the bed later, staring at her nightstand. She still kept her phone face down, still kept her charger in the drawer, not on the nightstand like before. Still wore those same 2 rings she always said made her feel put together. Even though I hadn't seen her wear them at home for months, now they were on every day, part of the image. And it hit me. She was preparing. Not for a confrontation, not even for guilt, for transition. She was managing both lives, the one with me, and the one that waited just outside the frame. And she was doing it so smoothly, so seamlessly, that I wasn't even part of the math anymore. Just a variable she planned to remove. That night, I watched her sleep again. This time, I noticed the way she clutched her pillow. Not like she was missing someone, like she was fine, like she had made peace with her version of the truth. I didn't touch her, didn't reach across the space between us, because the moment I did, it would mean I was still trying. And I wasn't. Not anymore. I just needed to see it clearly. I needed the silence to speak. And it did. Every night she didn't ask where I'd been. Every morning she didn't notice the way I watched her. Every hour she spent building a separate world, just out of my reach. It all spoke, loudly. Sunday mornings started like most of them did lately, quiet, distant, scripted. Kate made coffee, I sipped it. She scrolled through her phone while I stared at mine. We were in the same room, but not really. We hadn't been in a long time. Every word felt like something borrowed from the last time we still meant them. She mentioned going to a farmer's market with Jamie, her sister, around noon. "They've got this sourdough stand she's obsessed with," she said, not looking at me. I nodded like it mattered, like I was invested in sourdough. "Should be back around 3, she added, already halfway out of the kitchen. I watched the door shut behind her. I didn't feel relief, just a quiet shift, the way the temperature changes when a room empties. I didn't plan what I did next. I swear to God, I didn't go looking for anything. Not in some sneaky, spiteful way. It was reflex, a routine act. I walked into the office we both used and powered on her old laptop. She never used it anymore. Everything she did now was on her tablet or her work MacBook, the one I didn't have the password to. But the old one, it had dust on it. I just wanted to see if it still worked. It booted slowly, the way old machines do. Familiar chime, familiar login screen. No password. It opened to her old desktop. A mess of folders, **TS, photos, spreadsheets with names like budget final, XLSX, and Vaki _quotes _ 2019. And then there was one file, dead center, titled Forecast. I clicked on it without thinking. I don't even remember hesitating. My fingers moved before my brain caught up. The file opened in Word. Simple formatting. Black text. No dates. Just headings and bullets. But what I read, it wasn't a forecast. It was a plan. Not a financial breakdown. Not a work document. It was her exit strategy. Phase 1, emotional distancing. Phase 2, restoring independence. Phase 3, timing and transition. Phase 4, language cues. Each one detailed. Each one brutally specific. Under Phase 1, it read, reduce emotional touchpoints. Default to neutral tones in conflict. Avoid we language, reinforce individual voice. Under Phase 2, reconnect with pre-relationship social network. Reinforce solo routines, e.g., jogging, yoga, weekend plans. Build financial cushion through freelance opportunities. Keep discreet. Then came Phase 3. Begin slow introduction of new narrative, e.g., we've changed, need to grow. Gauge timing based on household stability and upcoming events. No holidays, birthdays. Initiate soft-check conversations around space and feeling off. I couldn't move. I just sat there, eyes locked on the screen, reading the sentences she'd written like she was planning a product launch or a breakup she wanted to get right. But it was Phase 4 that gutted me. It was titled, Language Cues to Maintain Peace During Transition. Avoid defensive tone. Mirror his emotional language without committing. Use phrases like, this isn't easy. I care about you deeply. This isn't your fault. Keep mention of Evan under 2x per week until final separation is initiated. My mouth went dry. She wrote his name in this document, as if he were part of the equation, a known variable. As if this wasn't a surprise or a temptation. As if he had always been the endpoint. I sat there with my hands in my lap, the cursor blinking at the bottom of the page like it was waiting for my reply. But I had none. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't late nights, missed texts, long showers, or vague excuses. This was method. This was a blueprint for how to leave me, and she'd been following it almost perfectly. I could trace every change back to one of these bullet points. Every emotional shift, every habit, every convenient withdrawal from our shared life. It was all in front of me in black and white. She hadn't been drifting. She'd been executing. I closed the laptop slowly, like it might detonate if I moved too fast. My reflection in the screen looked wrong. Pale. Still. I stood up, left the office, sat back down on the couch. Same spot I'd been in earlier, same mug still half full, still warm. I looked around the living room and tried to see it the way she saw it. Not as home, but as something temporary. Something she was preparing to leave behind. I tried to really think about when this started. Was it Evan? Or did he just happen to show up when she was already halfway gone? Was it my job? The late hours? The missed date nights? Did I create the distance she'd built her plan inside of? Or was this who she'd always been? Someone who didn't leave people. She phased them out. Quietly. Strategically. Without confrontation. With finesse. I hated how calm I felt. There was no screaming. No breaking dishes. No desperate rush to call her and demand answers. I didn't need answers. I had them. That file was the answer. It told me everything I needed to know. Not just about her, but about how little of this had been spontaneous. How every doubt I'd swallowed had roots. How every cold shoulder, every I'm just tired, every girl's night, was a calculated move. She didn't want to hurt me. That much was clear. Not out of kindness, but out of image control. She didn't want to be the villain in her own story. So she'd written herself a script. Something tidy, structured, sympathetic. Something where she got to be brave, not cruel. Evolving, not betraying. I spent the rest of that afternoon frozen in that realization. Not because I didn't know what to do next, but because I did. I didn't confront her. Instead, I made a folder, the forecast file, **ts, the kiss video timestamps. Then I sent it to her sister and 2 close friends. No message. Just, you should know. Her sister replied, this isn't the first time. Kate kept acting normal, posting pie recipes and quotes about growth. I didn't eat. I didn't argue. I just stopped playing along. She changed her status to listening to myself. Deleted our photos. I posted the video. Caption, if you leave, let it be honest. Her account vanished. In mediation, she talked about new chapters. I said nothing. She left a scented letter full of metaphors. I never read it. I moved to Savannah. Quiet, clean. She tried to rewrite the story online. I let her. I had the truth and peace.